Have you ever found yourself in a relationship where something just didn't feel right, but you couldn't quite put your finger on it? Maybe you've encountered a woman who seemed perfect at first, but over time, you started noticing red flags. The Bible warns us about certain types of women, 6 specific types, that can lead us down the wrong path if we're not careful. Are you paying attention to the signs? In this video, we're going to reveal these 6 types of women and how to recognize the warning signs before it's too late. Trust me, this is a conversation you don't want to miss. The Bible is not just a book of ancient stories. It's a guidebook for living today. God's Word offers wisdom and insight into every area of our lives, including our relationships. One of the things the Bible does is warn us about the kinds of people we should be cautious of, especially when it comes to romantic or close relationships. And while it's often easy to look at someone and think, "This person seems great," the Bible challenges us to look deeper. The women we surround ourselves with have a powerful influence on our lives, whether it's in our choices, our emotions, or even our relationship with God. The Bible specifically warns about 6 types of women whose influence can derail us if we're not paying attention. These are the women who can distract us, mislead us, or even harm us emotionally and spiritually. Understanding these warnings isn't about judging others. It's about protecting ourselves and staying aligned with God's purpose for our lives. The 6 types we'll explore in this video are based on wisdom found in Proverbs and other scriptures, and they offer insights into behaviors we need to recognize before they lead us astray. In this video, we're going to dive deep into each of these 6 types and explore what makes them dangerous. But it's not just about identifying these behaviors in others. It's also about reflecting on ourselves. Are we exhibiting any of these traits? Are there areas in our lives where we need to make changes to better align with God's will? The goal isn't just to highlight what's wrong, but to encourage us to be wiser, more discerning, and more intentional in our relationships. We're going to take a closer look at the seductive woman, the gossiping woman, the controlling woman, the bitter woman, and the others. We'll explore their behaviors, how they influence those around them, and how we can guard ourselves against falling into harmful relationships. And as we go through each type, we'll see how God calls us to recognize these patterns so we can protect our hearts and our futures. Are you ready to see these warnings and learn how to avoid them? Let's dive in. The first type of woman the Bible warns us about is the seductive woman. Proverbs 5, 6, and 7 describe the seductive woman as one who entices and lures others into temptation with promises of pleasure and excitement, only to lead them down a path of destruction. These women don't always look harmful at first. Often, they are charming, attractive, and captivating. They present themselves as the answer to everything you desire. But their true intentions are far more dangerous. The Bible warns that her path leads to ruin and destruction. In Proverbs 7:25-27, it says, "Do not let your heart turn to her ways or stray into her paths. Many are the victims she has brought down. Her slain are a mighty throng." Seduction isn't just about physical attraction. It also involves manipulation and deceit. It's about getting someone to compromise their values, priorities, and sometimes even their faith, in exchange for temporary gratification. This type of woman uses her influence to get what she wants, and she doesn't care about the consequences. She might promise you the world, but what you get in the end is heartache. guilt, and a life that's been derailed from what God intended. In real life, these women may not always show their true colors immediately. They often begin by making you feel special, feeding your ego, and drawing you in with their charm. But once they have your attention, they begin to manipulate and control, leading you into choices that you know deep down aren't right. If you find yourself in a relationship with someone like this, it's important to recognize the red flags early and get out before it's too late. The Bible gives us the wisdom to avoid these temptations, but we have to be willing to listen to the warnings and resist the pull of instant gratification. The best way to avoid falling for the seductive woman's trap is to keep our eyes open, stay connected to God, and maintain strong boundaries. This doesn't just apply to romantic relationships, but also to friendships or any situation where someone is trying to manipulate you into compromising your values. The Bible teaches us that we are to flee from temptation, not entertain it. So, if you find yourself in a situation where your integrity is at risk, walk away. God's protection is always available if we choose to listen to His warnings and follow His lead. The second type of woman the Bible warns about is the gossiping woman. Proverbs 16:28 says, "A perverse person stirs up conflict, and a gossip separates close friends." Gossiping may seem harmless at first, but the damage it causes is far-reaching. A woman who gossips doesn't just share information, she spreads lies, half-truths, and personal details with the intention of hurting others or elevating herself. Gossip causes division, erodes trust, and brings unnecessary conflict. It destroys relationships and can harm reputations. Gossip isn't just about spreading rumors, it's about tearing others down, often for personal gain. A gossiping woman might act like she's just venting or sharing information, but the truth is that she's participating in a destructive cycle. When she speaks ill of others, she creates an environment of distrust and suspicion. She may even try to manipulate those around her by making others look bad so that she can appear superior. The Bible calls this sin, and it warns us of the consequences. Proverbs 11:13 says, "A gossip betrays a confidence, but a trustworthy person keeps a secret." Being around a gossiping woman can be dangerous, not only for the damage it does to others, but for the effect it has on you. If you engage in gossip, you can lose your own integrity and become part of the problem. The Bible urges us to avoid gossip and instead speak words that build others up. Ephesians chapter 4:29 reminds us, "Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen." To protect yourself from the influence of a gossiping woman, it's essential to set boundaries and not engage in conversations that involve gossip. When someone tries to bring you into a conversation where others are being talked about negatively, change the subject or simply walk away. You don't have to participate in tearing people down. Instead, encourage others to speak positively and with integrity. And if you're in a relationship where gossip is prevalent, you may need to reconsider that connection because it can lead you down a dangerous path. The third type of woman the Bible warns us about is the controlling woman. A controlling woman seeks to dominate others through manipulation, guilt, or fear. In relationships, she might try to control every aspect of her partner's life, from what they wear to where they go. She might use emotional manipulation to get her way, making the other person feel obligated or guilty for not complying with her demands. This type of behavior is unhealthy and toxic, as it prevents the individual from growing in freedom and independence. In Ephesians 5:22-24, the Bible outlines the proper dynamic in a marriage, which is one of mutual love and respect. However, a controlling woman will try to manipulate or dominate, distorting the biblical model of love and submission. She may try to force her will upon others, dictating every move, every decision, and every interaction. This type of control can suffocate a relationship, making it impossible for either person to thrive. Instead of growing together in love, both individuals become trapped in a cycle of control and manipulation. To recognize a controlling woman, look for signs of manipulation, excessive jealousy, and an unwillingness to compromise. She may try to isolate you from your friends and family or criticize your every decision. She may use guilt to make you feel bad for not giving in to her demands. The Bible encourages mutual respect and love in relationships, not domination or control. If you find yourself in a relationship where one person is constantly trying to control the other, it's important to set boundaries and, if necessary, seek counsel to help navigate the situation. The key to avoiding a controlling relationship is to establish and maintain healthy boundaries. Respect for each other's autonomy and individual choices is crucial in any relationship. If you're in a situation where you feel controlled, it's vital to communicate your feelings openly and honestly. If the behavior doesn't change, it may be necessary to walk away for your emotional and spiritual well-being. The next warning the Bible gives us is about the bitter woman. A bitter woman is consumed with resentment, anger, and unforgiveness. Proverbs 21:19 says, "Better to live in a desert than with a quarrelsome and nagging wife." A bitter woman often holds on to past hurts, letting them fester and grow. She may be constantly angry, negative, or overly critical of those around her. This bitterness can seep into every area of her life, affecting her relationships, her mental health, and even her relationship with God. Bitterness comes from unresolved anger and hurt. It can be caused by betrayal, disappointment, or a sense of injustice. Instead of letting go of the past and forgiving, a bitter woman dwells on her wounds, allowing them to shape her future. This attitude prevents healing and keeps her trapped in a cycle of negativity. The Bible calls us to forgive and let go of bitterness. Ephesians 4:31-32 says, "Get rid of all bitterness, rage and anger, brawling and slander, along with every form of malice. Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other, just as in Christ God forgave you." If you find yourself surrounded by bitterness, it's essential to recognize it as a spiritual issue. God calls us to forgive and release our anger so that we can experience His peace and freedom. If you're in a relationship with someone who is bitter, it's crucial to approach the situation with grace and compassion, but also to recognize that bitterness can't be ignored. It must be addressed through open conversation and, if necessary, counseling or professional help. These 4 types of women: the seductive woman, the gossiping woman, the controlling woman, and the bitter woman, are just the beginning. The Bible gives us clear warnings about the impact they can have on our lives, but it also offers hope. God doesn't leave us defenseless. He provides the wisdom we need to avoid these toxic relationships and to live in the freedom He has called us to. The 4th type of woman the Bible warns about is the rebellious woman. This woman is often marked by a lack of respect for authority, whether that's in her relationship with her parents, her spouse, or even with God. She may challenge the established order, reject wisdom and guidance, and act in ways that lead to unnecessary chaos. The rebellious woman disregards instruction and prefers to live on her terms, no matter the consequences. In Proverbs 5:3-4, the Bible warns about the dangers of a woman who is rebellious and leads others astray. It says, "For the lips of an adulteress drip honey, and her speech is smoother than oil, but in the end she is bitter as gall, sharp as a double-edged sword." At first glance, this type of woman may seem appealing because of her confidence and boldness. However, beneath the surface, there's a dangerous, rebellious spirit that disregards the teachings of God and the wisdom of others. Her actions can create rifts in relationships and destroy lives. The rebellious woman's actions often come from a place of pride, and she may seek to manipulate others to fit her desires. She often sees authority figures as obstacles rather than guides, pushing against any form of structure that could help her grow. This type of behavior can lead to destructive consequences. Relationships with a rebellious woman can become filled with tension, confusion, and even emotional or spiritual harm, as her refusal to accept wisdom or instruction creates an unhealthy dynamic. The Bible teaches us that rebellion is not just about disobedience to people, it's ultimately disobedience to God. In 1 Samuel 15:23, it says, "For rebellion is like the sin of divination, and arrogance like the evil of idolatry." God sees rebellion as a form of idolatry, where a person chooses their own way over God's way. If we find ourselves or others exhibiting this type of rebellious spirit, it's important to address it early. The Bible encourages us to be humble, to listen to wisdom, and to submit to godly authority. If we ignore or indulge in rebellion, we risk making choices that lead to pain, disappointment, and a separation from God's plan for us. The fifth type of woman the Bible warns us about is the manipulative woman. A manipulative woman seeks to control situations and people for her own gain, often at the expense of others. She uses her charm, emotional appeal, and sometimes even guilt or fear to get what she wants. Manipulation can take many forms. It might be subtle, like playing on someone's insecurities, or it might be more overt, such as using emotional outbursts or threats to control someone's actions. In Proverbs 7, we see the story of a woman who manipulates a young man with smooth words and a tempting offer. Her goal is not his well-being, but rather to use him for her own desires. Proverbs 7:21-23 says, "With persuasive words she led him astray. She seduced him with her smooth talk. All at once he followed her like an ox going to the slaughter, like a deer stepping into a noose, till an arrow pierces his liver." This passage highlights the destructive nature of manipulation. The manipulative woman knows how to appeal to emotions, offering promises of love, acceptance, or comfort. But the end result is often harm, regret, and a loss of integrity. Manipulation is especially dangerous because it's hard to recognize in the moment. The manipulative woman often makes you feel like you owe her something or that you need her approval. She uses subtle tactics like guilt-tripping, playing the victim, or turning situations around so that you feel responsible for her happiness or well-being. Over time, this behavior can wear you down, making you feel as though you're the one in the wrong when, in reality, you've been manipulated all along. The Bible calls us to be wise in our relationships, to be aware of those who would use emotional manipulation for their own benefit. Proverbs 14:15 says, "The simple believe anything, but the prudent give thought to their steps." It's important to recognize manipulation early and set boundaries. A healthy relationship is built on mutual respect, trust, and honesty, not manipulation or control. If you recognize this behavior in someone, whether it's a romantic partner, a friend, or a family member, it's crucial to take action, speak up, set boundaries, and, if needed, walk away from the relationship to protect your emotional well-being. Finally, the sixth type of woman the Bible warns about is the divisive woman. A divisive woman stirs up conflict, causes division, and creates discord in relationships. Her presence in a group or relationship often leads to arguments, misunderstandings, and broken friendships. She may act like a peacekeeper on the surface, but her words and actions cause rifts and tear people apart. In Proverbs 6:16-19, God gives a list of things he hates, and one of them is a person who stirs up conflict in the community. A divisive woman thrives on drama, and she often fuels conflict for the sake of attention, control, or power. Divisiveness is especially dangerous because it can spread like wildfire. A divisive woman doesn't just target one person. She often tries to turn others against each other, creating sides, encouraging gossip, and breaking down relationships. Her tactics might include telling half-truths, exaggerating problems, or subtly undermining trust between people. If we allow divisiveness to continue unchecked, it can destroy friendships, families, and even entire communities. The Bible teaches us to be peacemakers, not troublemakers. In Romans 16:17, Paul warns the church, saying, "I urge you, brothers and sisters, to watch out for those who cause divisions and put obstacles in your way that are contrary to the teaching you have learned. Keep away from them." Divisiveness disrupts the unity that God desires for his people, and it's a serious issue that must be addressed. If you find yourself dealing with a divisive woman in your life, it's important to confront the issue, speak truth in love, and encourage reconciliation. Avoid becoming part of the drama, and instead, focus on promoting peace and unity wherever possible. These 6 types of women: the seductive woman, the gossiping woman, the controlling woman, the bitter woman, the rebellious woman, and the manipulative woman, are all warning signs from the Bible. They show us the dangers of unhealthy relationships and the destructive consequences that can arise from ignoring these red flags. But the good news is, God's Word gives us the wisdom and the strength to avoid these pitfalls. By recognizing the signs early and seeking His guidance, we can build healthier relationships that align with His will and lead to peace and fulfillment. The Bible also warns us about the irresponsible woman, the one who lacks self-control and accountability. Proverbs 29:15 says, "The rod of correction imparts wisdom, but the child left undisciplined brings shame to his mother." This verse speaks not just to a lack of discipline in children, but also to the broader concept of a woman who doesn't take responsibility for her actions or choices. This woman may act impulsively, live without regard for the consequences of her behavior, and avoid taking responsibility for her mistakes. Her actions, fueled by a lack of self-control or accountability, can cause harm not only to herself, but to those around her. The irresponsible woman often struggles with maintaining commitments, whether that's in relationships, work, or her responsibilities as a wife, mother, or friend. She may be unreliable, inconsistent, or reckless, leading to instability in her personal life. While she might charm others with her carefree attitude or spontaneous spirit, Her lack of responsibility will eventually catch up with her, causing pain and disappointment to those who depend on her. In relationships, this type of woman can create chaos. She may fail to follow through on promises, be unreliable with her time or emotions, or act without thinking through the consequences. Over time, the people around her begin to feel the weight of her irresponsibility, which can lead to broken relationships and emotional wounds. Proverbs 12:4 cautions that a wife of noble character is her husband's crown, but a disgraceful wife is like decay in his bones. This is a strong warning about how deeply a woman's actions, whether responsible or irresponsible, can affect her relationships and those closest to her. The Bible calls us to be faithful and responsible in all areas of life. In Luke 16:10, Jesus says, "Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much." Responsibility is a mark of maturity, and the Bible encourages us to take care of the small things so that we can be trusted with bigger responsibilities. An irresponsible woman, on the other hand, shows a lack of maturity and is not willing to face the consequences of her actions. God desires that we be good stewards of the lives He has given us, handling our relationships, our finances, and our time with integrity and wisdom. To protect yourself from the influence of an irresponsible woman, look for consistency in actions, reliability, and follow-through. If you find yourself in a relationship where irresponsibility is a constant issue, it's important to set clear boundaries and communicate your concerns. The longer you ignore or tolerate these behaviors, the more harm they can cause. Encourage self-reflection and accountability, and be prepared to make tough decisions if the behavior doesn't change. Another type of woman the Bible warns us about is the self-righteous woman. Proverbs 30:12 says, "There are those who are clean in their own eyes, but are not washed of their filth." This type of woman believes she is morally superior to others, often looking down on those she deems less righteous. She holds herself to a higher standard than everyone around her, judging others for their mistakes while excusing her own. The self-righteous woman prides herself on her virtues, but often fails to recognize her own flaws and sins. This creates an environment of judgment and division, where grace and understanding are absent. A self-righteous woman can be very difficult to be around because she often lacks empathy. Her critical spirit makes it hard for her to offer kindness and compassion to those who fall short. Rather than extending grace to others, she points fingers, critiques, and holds everyone else to impossible standards. This is dangerous because it can lead to pride, division, and resentment. Jesus was often critical of the Pharisees for their self-righteous attitudes, and he warns us in Matthew 7:3-5 not to focus on the speck in someone else's eye, while ignoring the plank in our own. The self-righteous woman is often so focused on her own rightness that she forgets the importance of humility and love. The Bible calls us to judge with grace and understanding, acknowledging that none of us are perfect. Romans 3:23 reminds us, "For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God." The self-righteous woman fails to recognize this universal truth, which leads her to treat others with disdain or condescension. If you find yourself dealing with someone who is self-righteous, it's important to confront the issue with love and humility, reminding them of the grace that God has extended to all of us. Lastly, the Bible warns about the envious woman. Proverbs 14:30 says, "A heart at peace gives life to the body, but envy rots the bones." Envy is a destructive emotion, and the envious woman is constantly comparing herself to others. She may feel jealousy over someone else's success, beauty, relationships, or possessions. This constant desire for what others have leads to bitterness and dissatisfaction. The envious woman might not openly express her jealousy, but it affects her heart and the way she interacts with others. She may become critical, resentful, or even try to sabotage the success of others to make herself feel better. Envy can also lead to unhealthy competition, as the envious woman is never content with what she has. Instead of focusing on her own growth and blessings, she looks outward, desiring the lives of others. This creates a cycle of negativity that can destroy friendships and relationships. When we allow envy to take root in our hearts, it can distort our view of ourselves and others. The Bible calls us to rejoice in the successes of others, to celebrate the blessings we receive, and to cultivate contentment in our own lives. The solution to envy is gratitude. By focusing on the good things God has given us and the blessings we've already received, we can combat feelings of jealousy. Philippians chapter 4 reminds us that true contentment comes from within, not from comparing ourselves to others. I have learned to be content, whatever the circumstances. If you find yourself struggling with envy, take time to reflect on all that God has blessed you with and shift your focus back to Him. These 6 types of women: the seductive woman, the gossiping woman, the controlling woman, the bitter woman, the rebellious woman, the manipulative woman, the irresponsible woman, the self-righteous woman, and the envious woman, represent the challenges we may face in relationships. But more importantly, they represent the behaviors we need to be aware of, not just in others, but in ourselves. The Bible gives us clear warnings and calls us to recognize these behaviors, not to judge others, but to protect our hearts and minds from negative influences. With God's wisdom and guidance, we can navigate our relationships with discernment, keeping our hearts pure and our lives aligned with His purpose. As we look deeper into the types of women the Bible warns us about, it's important to understand that these warnings are not about condemning others, but about protecting ourselves from influences that can derail us. The Bible is filled with wisdom about relationships, how to build healthy ones, how to avoid toxic ones, and how to handle the complex dynamics of human interaction. Each warning is a loving reminder from God, guiding us toward peace and away from harm. The 7th type of woman the Bible warns us about is the deceitful woman. Proverbs 12:19 says, "Truthful lips endure forever, but a lying tongue lasts only a moment." Deceit is one of the most dangerous characteristics to encounter in a relationship, and it often goes unnoticed until it's too late. The deceitful woman may not tell outright lies at first, but she will manipulate the truth, twist facts, or hide critical information to suit her needs. Over time, these small lies can snowball into larger deceptions, causing massive damage to trust and relationships. A deceitful woman may use charm and cunning to gain your trust, only to betray it later. She could lie to get ahead, conceal her true intentions, or deceive others for personal gain. This behavior isn't always easy to spot in the beginning, because lies often appear harmless. A well-crafted story or a hidden agenda can sometimes seem like just a misunderstanding. But over time, the truth starts to unravel, as Proverbs 26:24-26 warns. Whoever hates disguises himself with his lips and harbors deceit in his heart. When he speaks graciously, believe him not, for there are 7 abominations in his heart. Deceit can take many forms. It can be a small white lie, a false portrayal of one's intentions, or a manipulative attempt to twist facts in order to control a situation. The Bible stresses the importance of truth. Jesus himself said, "You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." John 8:32. In relationships, truth is essential to building a strong foundation. If you find yourself dealing with deceit, it's crucial to confront the lies and seek the truth. Protect yourself from someone who makes deceit a pattern in their life, because it will eventually tear down the trust and integrity that your relationship relies on. Next, the Bible warns us about the lazy woman. Proverbs 31:27 tells us, "She watches over the affairs of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness." A lazy woman, while seemingly harmless, can create an environment of stagnation and frustration. Laziness doesn't just refer to physical laziness. It can also manifest in emotional or spiritual complacency. The lazy woman may fail to contribute to the relationship, avoid taking responsibility, or neglect the things that matter most. Over time, this leads to frustration, resentment, and the erosion of trust. In a relationship, a lazy woman can create a significant imbalance. If one partner is carrying all the responsibility, whether it's in terms of finances, household chores, or emotional labor, the relationship becomes uneven and eventually unhealthy. Proverbs 18:9 warns, "One who is slack in his work is brother to one who destroys." Laziness in a relationship can feel like a weight that drags both individuals down, leading to a lack of progress and growth. A healthy relationship requires effort from both parties. God calls us to work diligently, be responsible, and contribute to the well-being of the relationship. If you're in a relationship where laziness is prevalent, it's important to have an honest conversation about the imbalance and make sure both parties are putting in the effort required. God desires us to be diligent, faithful, and hardworking in all areas of life, including our relationships. The ninth type of woman the Bible warns about is the self-centered woman. Proverbs 18:1 says, "An unfriendly person pursues selfish ends, and against all sound judgment starts quarrels." A self-centered woman is primarily concerned with her own needs, desires, and interests, often disregarding the needs and feelings of those around her. This kind of woman sees relationships as transactional. What can you do for her? How can she benefit from you? If her needs aren't being met, she might pull away, criticize, or even manipulate the situation to get what she wants. In relationships, this self-centered attitude creates an imbalance where one person is constantly giving while the other is always taking. The self-centered woman doesn't show empathy, compassion, or care for her partner's needs. She is emotionally distant or even dismissive when her partner requires attention, support, or affection. Over time, this can lead to a breakdown in communication, trust, and intimacy. Jesus taught us to love our neighbors as ourselves, and this principle can be applied to our relationships. Selflessness is a key characteristic of a healthy partnership. A relationship where both parties are consistently putting the needs of the other first is a relationship that thrives. If you're with someone who is constantly looking inward without consideration for others, it's important to reflect on the future of the relationship and whether it can meet both of your needs in a balanced way. Another warning in the Bible comes against the prideful woman. Proverbs 16:18 says, "Pride goes before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall." A prideful woman is someone who elevates herself above others, refusing to admit when she's wrong, and often putting her own desires and opinions before everyone else's. This type of pride isn't just about arrogance, it's about a deep-rooted sense of superiority and entitlement. A prideful woman might dismiss others' feelings, criticize those who disagree with her, or refuse to learn from mistakes. In a relationship, pride creates barriers to communication and growth. A prideful woman may refuse to listen to her partner, reject constructive criticism, or dominate the relationship by constantly asserting her own needs and desires. The Bible shows us that humility is the opposite of pride, and it's what fosters peace, understanding, and unity in relationships. James chapter 4:6 reminds us, God opposes the proud, but shows favor to the humble. Pride disrupts the peace of relationships and causes people to become disconnected from one another. If you're in a relationship with someone who exhibits pride, it's essential to address the issue directly. Humility is key to a healthy relationship, and both partners need to be willing to listen, learn, and grow together. Pride can be destructive, but when both partners humble themselves before God and each other, they open the door for deeper connection and mutual respect. The Bible provides us with clear wisdom about the types of women we should be cautious of. While these warnings may seem harsh, they are ultimately for our protection. God's desire is for us to have healthy, flourishing relationships that honor Him. By recognizing these harmful behaviors early and aligning our relationships with His guidance, we can avoid unnecessary pain and build relationships that reflect His love, grace, and truth. As we look at the final type of woman the Bible warns us about, we come to the lazy woman. Proverbs 31:27 says, "She watches over the affairs of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness." The lazy woman, in the biblical sense, is someone who lacks a sense of responsibility and purpose. Her lack of action leads to wasted potential, broken commitments, and a life of stagnation. She is unmotivated, often passive, and uninterested in working hard or contributing meaningfully to the world around her. Laziness can take many forms in relationships. It might look like neglecting one's responsibilities, avoiding difficult conversations, or being unwilling to invest time and effort into maintaining a healthy relationship. This behavior is dangerous because it allows for a toxic cycle to take hold. Relationships that lack energy and engagement begin to break down over time. The lazy woman may take the relationship for granted, leaving her partner to carry the burden of all the work. This can lead to frustration, resentment, and ultimately, a feeling of being unappreciated and unloved. The Bible teaches that we are called to be diligent in all things, including our relationships. A relationship requires work, constant communication, effort, and mutual care. In contrast, the lazy woman tends to avoid these responsibilities, often believing that love should come easily or that someone else will take care of everything. This mindset can cause long-term damage, both to herself and to those around her. If you find yourself in a relationship where one partner is unwilling to put in the effort, it's time to have a serious conversation about mutual responsibility and commitment. Being lazy is not just about not working. It can also be about not dealing with issues head-on. A lazy woman may avoid conflict or difficult situations, hoping they'll go away on their own. But as the Bible shows us, avoidance only leads to greater problems down the road. Proverbs 6:9-11 warns against the consequences of laziness, saying, "How long will you lie there, you sluggard? When will you get up from your sleep? A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come on you like a thief, and scarcity like an armed man. This verse doesn't just apply to finances. It can apply to every aspect of life. If we are lazy in our relationships, avoiding the hard work required to build trust, understanding, and intimacy, we will see the fruits of that laziness in disconnection and isolation. Building a strong relationship requires effort, consistency, and sacrifice. It requires both parties to be active participants in the relationship, taking responsibility for their actions and working together towards shared goals. Lastly, let's talk about the controlling woman. Proverbs 12:4 says, "A wife of noble character is her husband's crown, but a disgraceful wife is like decay in his bones." The controlling woman is one who tries to manipulate or dominate others, particularly in relationships. She may use guilt, manipulation, or emotional pressure to get her way. Her goal is not partnership or mutual respect, but control. This kind of woman often believes that others should do things her way, and that her perspective is the only one that matters. She may attempt to micromanage the lives of those around her, leading to an oppressive environment where freedom and individual expression are stifled. Control can manifest in many ways. It might involve constant criticism, attempts to isolate a partner from their friends or family, or dictating how someone should think, feel, or act. This can create a toxic relationship dynamic, where the person being controlled feels powerless, frustrated, and trapped. The controlling woman may not realize the damage she is doing, but over time, her actions can leave a lasting negative impact on the people she tries to control. God's word tells us that relationships should be characterized by mutual respect, love, and freedom. Ephesians 5:21 says, "Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ." This submission is not about control, it's about mutual respect and a shared commitment to God's purpose. The controlling woman does not allow for this mutual respect. Instead, she imposes her will on others, often under the guise of love or care. But true love doesn't seek to dominate. It seeks to build up and support. If you find yourself in a relationship with someone who is controlling, it's important to set clear boundaries and speak up. A healthy relationship is based on trust, respect, and a willingness to grow together. A controlling dynamic prevents growth, creating an unhealthy cycle of manipulation and fear. It's crucial to address the issue, set boundaries, and ensure that both parties are contributing to the relationship in a balanced, respectful way. These warnings in the Bible are not meant to create fear or condemnation, but to provide guidance and protection. God's heart is always for our well-being, and He warns us of these types of behaviors because they can lead us away from His best for us. Relationships are meant to be life-giving, not life-draining. If we can recognize these behaviors, both in ourselves and in others, we can make choices that lead us toward healthier, more fulfilling relationships that honor God and reflect His love and truth. The wisdom found in Proverbs and other biblical texts provides a framework for understanding how to navigate the complexities of human relationships. By being aware of these warning signs, we can make better choices, set appropriate boundaries, and live in peace. God's desire is that we thrive, not just survive, in our relationships. Let these warnings serve as an invitation to reflect, grow, and pursue the kind of relationships that align with God's will for our lives. As we come to the conclusion of our discussion on the types of women the Bible warns about, it's important to recognize that these warnings are not just for identifying toxic behaviors in others, but also for self-reflection. The Bible calls us to examine ourselves, our actions, and our relationships through the lens of God's wisdom. It's easy to look at others and point out flaws, but what God desires is a heart that is open to transformation, a heart that is willing to grow and become more like Him. We've explored many types of women in this video: the seductive woman, the gossiping woman, the controlling woman, the bitter woman, the rebellious woman, the manipulative woman, the irresponsible woman, the self-righteous woman, the envious woman, the deceitful woman, the lazy woman, the self-centered woman, and the prideful woman. While these behaviors are certainly harmful in relationships, it's essential to remember that God's Word also offers us a way out. He provides us with wisdom, grace, and guidance to avoid these pitfalls and build relationships that honor Him. The beauty of the Bible's warnings is that they are never meant to leave us in condemnation. Instead, they are an invitation to course correct, to make choices that align with God's will for our lives. If we find ourselves exhibiting some of these negative traits, there's always room for repentance and change. God doesn't abandon us in our mistakes. He calls us to come back to Him, to receive His forgiveness, and to walk in His truth. It's never too late to start building healthier, more God-honoring relationships. As we reflect on these biblical principles, it's also important to consider the relationships we cultivate in our lives. Are we surrounding ourselves with people who uplift and encourage us? Or are we aligning ourselves with those who may lead us astray? God calls us to be wise in the relationships we choose, to seek out friends, partners, and companions who share our values and who will encourage us to grow in our faith. Proverbs 13:20 says, "Walk with the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffers harm." The people we spend time with will have a profound impact on our lives, and it's essential that we choose relationships that help us become more like Christ. The challenge now is to take what we've learned and apply it to our own lives. Are we listening to God's warnings? Are we making decisions in our relationships that reflect His wisdom, whether it's confronting unhealthy behaviors in ourselves or setting boundaries with others? God's wisdom is always available to help us navigate these challenges. The key is to remain humble, to seek His guidance, and to trust that He has a plan for every relationship we have. In closing, the Bible's warnings are not about condemnation. They are about protection, wisdom, and love. They are an invitation to live better, more fulfilling lives that honor God and reflect His love. By recognizing these warning signs, we can avoid unnecessary pain and heartache, build stronger relationships, and ultimately live the lives God has called us to. Let's take these lessons to heart and move forward with a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that God is always with us, guiding us every step of the way.